Now moving to the next session, which is about oneM2M. Now the session will have two speakers, Mr. Roland and Mr. Andreas. Now I'll request you to kindly come on stage. Now I would like to read a small bio about. You can sit. Roland is the oneM2M TV chair, and he works at the T-Mobile International Austria in the standards, patents, and OSPO team in the group technology of Deutsche Telekom, where he is responsible for standardization activities in the service domain. So and now the next speaker is Mr. Andreas. Now, request him to come on stage, please. Mr. Andreas is working in the telecommunications sector since 1999. He was responsible for the development of national deployment plans for the 3G radio access networks in Austria. In 2003, he joined the Deutsche Telekom Standardization and IPR Management Group, where he headed various projects such as network sharing, self-organization networks, HomeNet Node B, Volt, and roaming in standards. Now, I request Mr. Roland to make a presentation on the oneM2M.
Okay, thank you very much for this kind invitation. Similar to Enrico, I'm happy to be here, and we really enjoyed having the technical plenary session this week here, hosted by TSTSI in India. It was a very good chance to come back to India and discuss and progress the work in standards. Before I start, it's an interesting, when we were introduced, it came to my mind that Andreas and I have been starting in the company at the same day, and even on the welcome day we met, and now we are on stage here. Sometime after this, it was 1999, so you can calculate how long we are, be together, somehow related also on the work. That's maybe a soft, fun fact. But now I would like to come to the oneM2M. I have more or less 3 points I would like to bring to you. It's one, I was asked to introduce the organization of oneM2M. The other one is point to the core elements, and I will take up what Enrico said. And the third point is to maybe introduce you to some of the functionalities in release 4 and end with an overview of what will happen in release 5, what is next. Since this might take a whole day, I will be very quick and brief. The presentation is available, and I guess it will also be shared afterwards, so that you are invited to read through some of the details that I might not be able to talk in this session. But as Enrico pointed out, we are happy to receive any of your questions or comments, and via email after you have read through, or even after this talk of today. With that, I'd like to start. Yeah, it's about, as I said, the organization, the standard, and the roadmap of oneM2M. And I start with the foundation of the oneM2M partnership project. Maybe many of you know, but I start there. Since oneM2M has been founded in order to overcome fragmentation, perceived fragmentation, real fragmentation at the time when it was founded and even before, and that was in 2012. So what we had last year was the 10 years anniversary. The idea was of all the founding partners to get together and define a global standard that allows exactly the to ease the life for developers or for very specific application developers in the certain vertical industries, and to provide something. Maybe I have an analogy. Analogies are always bad, but I think it's the same development we saw with operating systems on computers, from very specific purpose computers into a more common purpose computer. And what was the breakthrough was common operating systems that allows you to do many different things, use different application on the same set of a computer architecture, and this is somehow similar. So what oneM2M would like to provide, this is the goal set, is to allow such things, and that was the idea from the very beginning. So there was also an reuse of existing specifications, and among the main partners, as you can see here, ATIS, TIA, ETSI, TSTSI, CCSA, TTA, ARAB, and TTC. We had also partners that were temporarily part of oneM2M, and technology of which have been integrated or related to, like OMA, the device management part, and Lightweight M2M, Broadband Forum, and HGI, where you can find technologies used, reused, and integrated in oneM2M. I come to the rest of this later. So with that, these partners fund and have founded the organization as such, and the members of these partners are those who drive the work, who contribute and create and define the specifications based on their needs, based on their interest. So now let's, another organizational part is how oneM2M is organized. So the partners as such, the main driver of the steering committee, which is setting up the framework, the organizational framework, the financial framework, and legal framework, which is also responsible for marketing and communications activities, as well as one core topic that has been progressed over the last 2 or 3 years is on pointing to the specificities of technology with regard to the sustainability, also an aspect that Enrico mentioned in his initial talk. And one of the main committees of the steering committee is the technical plenary. The technical plenary is which met this week, is the core group that develops the specifications. And it has 3 working groups, and I come to that in a minute. So it's the requirements and domain models working group, the system design and security working group, and as well as the testing and developers ecosystem working group. In the slide set, you can also find details who is responsible, the who is who of oneM2M, who is chair. So we have had Enrico here as steering committee chair. I'm myself chairing the technical plenary, and then we have the working groups chaired by Shane, Peter Niblet for the STS working group, and Andrew, TDE working group. And Andrew is is also here. So the TD working group chair is part of today's session, as well as a TP vice chair, Jae-sung Song, and also the SDS vice chair, Song Myung. So if you have questions, many people are here that can go also in very detailed discussions. And I nearly forgot, so also Bob Flynn, as vice chair of the TTE working group chair, is also with us. So you will get to know him later. In the slide set, there is also some details about the working groups. So I think I will not go through that in detail, but for your information, it's there. What is the terms of references of which group? So mainly the requirements and domain models group is discussing use cases from different also vertical industries derived from that requirements that might be common enough to serve this horizontal approach and maybe reused by other domains. So conduct studies and define specifications, identify and specify information and data models, ontologies to support such an harmonizing and interworking with and across vertical domains. And finally, also one core element is to enable such cross-domain data exchange. Whereas the system design and security working group is the core is to define the system architecture, including the functional entities, resources, reference points, and message flows, system management, device management, protocol aspects, etc. And last but not least, one core element of IoT, so the built-in security functionality. So it's defining a security framework, including means for identity, credential management, data privacy, security functions, authentication, confidentiality, integrity, verifications, authorization, etc. So you have a bunch of tools and functionalities that support different deployments and also different or the required security elements that you need. And last but not least, the testing and developers ecosystem working group. It's not only to define the test specification, test requirements, test purposes, etc. Sorry, in order to support conformance testing, interoperability testing. It also produces developer guides, guidelines, how to use, how to best use, is that also introductions to the set of specifications, supervise the test events and developer-related events like hackathons and developer tutorials and much more. With that in mind, we can summarize. So oneM2M produces specifications. This is the specifications are derived from requirements of different domains or have been derived. Some are mentioned here, and based on these use cases, requirements specified, and these are further detailed in technical specifications as described before, the system architecture and security specifications, protocol definitions, etc. Certain interworking aspects. So this is what is one part, and complementing the specification work are the test events, the interoperability that happens regularly, and last but not least, the certification, which currently is, or since 2019, is done mainly led by the Global Certification Forum as the certification body, with test houses potentially across the world. Finally, all these specifications are transposed. This is the specificity of partnership project into the regional partners specification. All the oneM2M specifications become specifications of these specific regions. And in addition to that, also the release 2 specifications have been transposed also as ITU-T specifications. It's the Y4500 series, and only recently also the security specifications have been approved and is now officially also ITU-T specification. And looking at the time, so the key events timeline should show you what happened and what will happen, very, very high level. But what it shows is exactly what I said before. It's the elements that are part of the specifications. So the red line or the red dots show you the different releases that have been developed. The blue on the top is, the light blue is the interoperability events. So you see it's very regular. You see there was a period where it was not that many things happened, but that was due to the lockdown. In this time period, there was the first virtual interoperability event taking place in order to have such an capability. And but I think what's always good, coming back to the virtual events, is the benefit of face-to-face meetings. And we had that this week. It's good to have these talks, these offline talks, these additional questions. And if you are in a region, then it's always the intention of also from oneM2M to invite observers to have discussions and let them get into more details of the specifications and how the work is done here in oneM2M. The greens are the hackathon events, as I mentioned before, also organized by TTE. You see several industry day events similar as we have here. They're referred to some white papers. Maybe one of the recent white papers, the sustainability IoT features, there were 2 versions of the white paper. I think it's a very, very good read since it summarizes what is important for sustainability, what are the technical aspects, and how, for example, technologies and the framework like oneM2M can help and support here. There's an announcement I can make, this bubble here on the right part, which has no color yet. This is an announcing that there will be a joint oneM2M at the ISG MEC white paper that will be published soon, maybe end of this quarter. You can also see here that the current release 5 is planned to be finalized at the end of 2024. And you see also the timeline of the certification reflected here. I have to. Now, coming back to what Enrico mentioned, it's now depicted in one slide. What is the core of oneM2M? We once summarized it, breaking down the silos. I think it's exactly what has been mentioned by Enrico. The usual way to build a solution in the IoT environment is you have a specific application with specific technology, specific knowledge that you somehow need to communicate with many devices according to a certain aspect. And you start building your solution, which is logical and clear, but the problem might appear, and it is already there, that all these solutions develop their own technologies, maybe also in a very, very specific way. And if you have a new aspect that comes in, maybe new functionality, new things to do, or even integrate acquired new facilities or whatever, then you have to restart the whole thing again. And the idea of oneM2M was from the very beginning to allow a more horizontal approach, so that you kind of separate the technology or the requirements or the application, specific application service from a service layer that provides all these common building blocks that you need in when you start communicating, exchanging data. I come to that which we defined, and also decouple them from the communications technologies underneath, so that you can, as an expert level application developer, and you can imagine many different areas where you have your applications running, and that are very specific to certain vertical industries, that you have common interests in for example, connecting to devices that are spread globally, connecting to different settings, to different data centers, whatever, that you have certain aspects that are common to all of these. And with such a service layer, not only ease the enhancements of your functionalities, the integration of new devices, new areas, but you also all of a sudden have the capability to exchange data across these domains, and that might lead to new potential markets, to new potential functionalities, and you gain out of the horizontal information flow, you gain future possibilities. What are these? What are these common services? On the left, you see the picture from the slide before. So the blue one is this specific application layer. It might not be IoT application layer. It might really be a very specific industry interest, very with their specific knowledge. Underneath, you have this common service layer, which is the service framework, the software service framework defined by oneM2M. And this rides on top of the connectivity layer and connects devices, gateways with infrastructure. And what common service functions have we defined? So this is a very high level overview. This is the status of release 4. So registration, all these entities need to register in order to know them, in order to contact them. Communication management, when and how to communicate best, dependent on certain policies that might be applied, or also depending on whether or not you are your connectivity is available. If you think about all these mobile use cases where you might not always be connected. Security in all these extremities, from end-to-end security, all the authentication, authorization aspects are covered here in a very detailed specification that also led down to some capabilities, so access control policies down to the level of resources, specific resources, so that you really have can decide who can reach which data. Discovery of entities and services. Data management repository, an important part to have stored some of these data. Semantics, to enrich semantics capabilities, to ease the integration of very lightweight devices with low capabilities, who can enrich semantically via a CSE on a gateway additional information, so that the application at the other end doesn't even know that the device is not capable of storing all these data, for example. But there are several other aspects. Device management, for sure, to manage the devices, but also the services. Group management, to handle groups. Subscription notification as an important part. Application service management, I said that. Location functionality, that's combined with all the other things to get an overview of the devices, where they are, what you can do. Service charging accounting in order to log of all these data. Network service exposure, which is the connectivity or the interface towards the connectivity layer. So there are specific interworking defined to 3GPP based on the capabilities of 3GPP networks to leverage the full potential of them as a service layer in order to avoid that the application on top, which is highly specified, need to know about that. So you don't have to change the application, but you can leverage all the capabilities underneath. Transaction management, time management, it's also important to have this kind of synchronizing the data and you have also devices that might not have the capability to synchronize the time, that there are entities that can help bringing the data in order on one side as well as on the other side. Session management and process management, which allows to provide, from an application point of view, to provide an intermediate node with the capability to start processes on devices. These are the sets of common service functions. It's a broad set and shows the capabilities of this common service toolkit. The beauty is now it looks huge and very complex, and when I start small, is there a need to implement all of that? No, you can start small with the functions you need and then enhance over the time. You might have infrastructure nodes that are capable of everything, but you might reduce the capabilities depending on your deployment use case at gateway level or device level. Yeah, this list, and I think I have to close. This is what I want to bring up is an evolution of features over the time, starting with release 1 up to release 4. There's a list. Maybe if you provide me additional 5 minutes, there's a list of functionalities listed here in this release 4. And what I can introduce you, there is some more information in this slide set. I might not be able to go through all of that, but I will show you the principle and maybe 1 or 2 of these functionalities, and then it's easy for you to learn in a high level what does this mean, and that might provide you with much more information about how oneM2M works and about these specific functionalities. So it's provide you a short overview, which is also available on we had for some time ago, it was a pre-features view in a oneM2M release 4 webinar that is still, you can watch. It's available via the oneM2M website. And I bring some of these aspects at that time detailed by Dale Seed, the former STS working group chair. And this is a snapshot. I start with a snapshot that was not from him, but it's the very first line of the capabilities of release 4 was the smart device template 4.0, which is an evolution of earlier smart device template versions. And this is one, the smart device template as such came in from other organizations. This HGI developed this initially, and together with all other bodies like OMA and OCF, in oneM2M release 3, for example, there was definition of the smart device template containing 84 module classes and 50 devices with various functions. And what 2 aspects I would like to highlight here. So it's not anything that we invented by alone, but it was always a broad set of inputs. And in release 4, the smart device template was restructured. It initially started with focus on home, but now it's fit to all the verticals. Currently, we have, and I come to that in an overview, what verticals are already covered. In principle, the organization is that you have common module classes and then specific ones covering these vertical industries. These, as I said, these information models are structured like module classes and device modules, and these modules can be grouped to build new devices or add functions and devices. So it's building block like functionality. And this is just a snapshot from now. So the common domain contains currently 117 module classes and 19 device models. Home domain is still the biggest, but others will take up. You see health domain, railway domain, city domain, vehicular domain, industry domain, and agricultural domain. And to highlight this is not invented by people or introduced by people from somewhere, but it was really domain-specific input that was put together. And you can see that in the TS23. Now I come to, for the next one, this is specific to some of the functionalities listed in, if you recall, this red block with the new functionalities in release 4. And for that, I'd like to introduce you with some of the elements in oneM2M. So at the slide, you see on the left side, the device side. In the middle, you have an infrastructure node, and the right side is an application on top of this infrastructure. So you have application entities. That's the oneM2M speak at the application level of the device side and as well as on the infrastructure side. And on the infrastructure, you have the core component of oneM2M, which is the common service entity. Is the block of potential common service functions that are provided. This CSE and this is a minimum set or initial deployment where you have one infrastructure node and then the devices. You might have gateways in between, so-called middle nodes, and you can structure your deployment accordingly. This is what I talked before. And the CSE infrastructure node might have all the functionalities built in, but you can start with functionality that you need for your deployment. The devices are represented at the CSE in such a structure in a resource tree, as resource oriented, as also was mentioned by Enrico. It's a resource-based architecture of oneM2M. So you have this resource tree for storing the metadata and data of applications and devices. This is how you build your system. There are different resource types defined. I will not go into that detail, but you can read it up in the specifications. But these resource types allow you to model different use cases. One of the functions is the geoquery. I go through one of these and then I move to release 5. But this is the way how you can go through these. So there's a lot of these functionalities described here, and I think it's good to follow. For example, you have these devices. Again, they have a location, and it's on the application side available. As we know, they register at the CSE, and the structure is built accordingly. All these processes are described in the specifications, how this should work. So if you follow the specification, all you need to do on the device level is to apply according to the interface specification. It's the M called MCA, but that's another detail. I will not go into much of the details, but in principle, there's a standardized way to get this data on the CSE base. So you have the representation of each of the applications and the data that has been sent. So the infrastructure node is now aware of these applications. The application on the other side, on the infrastructure side, sends now a geoquery request to discover the temperature sensor in New York City in that example. And you see here the request, and the CSE is capable of finding the special data and sends it back. So this is the really easy, I think, easy to understand function how oneM2M is built. Now, here's the point where I jump. There are many other functionalities described in a similar way, so that you see how these architecture and functional components work with each other. Process management services is described. So it's just message primitive profiles that allows you to minimize the content that's needed to be transported from the device to the infrastructure, but the infrastructure or the CSE knows some of the information that needs to be added when application on the other side asks. So all these capabilities are there. Time management, as I said, where the infrastructure node or the CSE is able to adjust the timing so that for the application, it's this application of the infrastructure side, it's in the same order than from the devices, although they might not be synchronized in timing. So this to provide the offset information and software campaigning. And interesting thing here, you see a scenario where you have the infrastructure CSE and the nodes, so intermediate CSEs. And what do we do with that? So the software campaigning allows you now to offload software management to the CSE from the application towards the CSE using this functionality, and to orchestrate the CSE's deployment on fork and edge nodes, for example. So this is one of the enhancements to better support deployments in fork and edge scenarios. It's also described here, so I will not go with semantic reasoning. Also a point where how you increase the information that's available semantically towards the application. That's also described here. Interworking technology, this describes on one example with the Modbus interworking that now you have the CSE, you have an interworking entity, this here called IPE, which is an application for the from oneM2M point of view, and it does the mapping towards the specific technology on the left-hand side. And so the Modbus devices are represented, in this case, the interwork devices are represented as oneM2M devices, which means the application on the right side doesn't care about where these devices are, what these devices are able to do, but since it's the oneM2M representation, you ease the interface from the application towards the CSE, in that case, towards the service layer, and that I think transmits the main message. You have a simple interface towards your highly specified application, and you can easily integrate. Then there are some functionalities described specifically with the network exposure from recording to the 3GPP network, where we leverage capabilities that are defined in 3GPP. I'll quickly go through it. Two use cases are described here: network congestion monitoring, the quality of service. One important part, resource synchronization. It's similar to the timing thing. In that way, here you can No, it's not the timing thing. It's the synchronization is to have the information available on all parts of your deployment. You have the specific application, you have an middle node that's close to the application, and you have your infrastructure node. And to synchronize activities or changes across these deployments. And what's introduced in release 4 is that you have a synchronization that started on the infrastructure side and synchronizes down to the device. It's depicted here in much more detail. Service subscriber and user management, the main the core elements are described here in a high level. The feature like service subscriber user profiles, service user-based authorization, and service user-based charging and accounting. Security enhancements, some new security features, the attribute level access control policies, then context-aware access control policies, and permission-based discovery. Group anycast, sumcast, so I go quickly to that. Discovery-based operations. So the idea is that a single request sent by the application discovers the applications on the left-hand side. In this example, there are two, but there can be more, with labels set to temperature, and then to update the application name. This is the example giving here to in one go from the application point of view, and now it performs the request. So it was a very quick go through, but I think it's easy to follow it after you understood the concept that I wanted to introduce. It showed you which deployment options you have in a very basic format, but you can see it's very flexible in that way. And where I would like to end my presentation is with the next slide. It's the future feature development. Where we are now, what we did this week was progressing studies and use case discussions, as well as requirements development for release 5. So this is currently ongoing. Areas and work items that are progressed, and that's not the end of the story, but I give you some examples. It's AI enablement, how this service layer can support AI applications, what services and what functionalities would be benefit the AI functions, what are the common aspects, and this is the discussion right now, how to get let's say it bluntly, how to get clean data to the AI application so that there's a meaningful outcome of that, differentiate between training data and others. So that's the discussion that's ongoing. In enhancements to the information model, depending on additional vertical input. Two important parts, I guess, the data protection regulations support, since there are regional requirements there, so you need to enhance your services to have the possibility to cover the needs there. Data license management, it's an important thing. If you exchange data must have licenses, so you cannot take it and use it as you like. You have to apply to the licenses, and it would be good to do that in an automated way without any manual or inspection from human beings. So this is one of the areas we are currently studying. Smart city enterprise domain enablement enhancements, enablement of the IoT in the metaverse. This is the very recent work item that has been started. It's currently in a study phase. So studying what is metaverse, what is IoT, what is at the end, maybe what is that's needed to be supported in order to allow the support of these technologies. interworkings, as I had one example with the Modbus interworking, we had defined many interworkings. So you recall there's the IPE that defines how to interconnect easily so that on the application can integrate all those devices. Additional technologies are discussed here. And progress and enhancement of the IoT communication to protect 3GPP networks, it's called here, but this is exactly what you saw, that the service layer of oneM2M tries to get the best out of the functionality that's provided by APIs defined in 3GPP, so that they can best leverage, and also to protect the 3GPP networks. IoT scenarios tend to be, if they are not implemented mindful, they might be too chatty and might lead to severe problems in mobile networks, for example. So that can be taken care of in such a service layer. And again, the benefit is that your specific application that has all the knowledge of your vertical industry doesn't need to take care of it. It's taken care of by the service layer. So there's no need to change your highly specified applications, and that's the big benefit. And yeah, what will come next? So we are currently in these areas work on technical reports. Some requirements have been defined, and at the end we will also enhance the technical specifications. Enrico mentioned the topic that is being presented in the future in release 5 timeframe. It's on the digital twin, and others will come. So this is the right time to maybe also start getting involved in oneM2M and help forming the specifications in a way that it best supports your needs. And with that, I'd like to close. Sorry for taking maybe too much time, and I'd like to hand over to my colleague Andreas, who will provide you insights in what tools are available, what can be used by developers to get more insight into this technology. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thanks for the insights what oneM2M is doing and what are the forthcoming releases. I would like to know what are the areas in which SDS is working currently, the security related areas.
Sorry,
Yeah, I just wanted to know what are the areas in which the IoT SDS group is working on.
The areas, yeah. Yeah, currently in the this week we had, to be very precise, this week I'm not aware of any security specific input contribution, but you need to understand we had it depends. So another aspect of oneM2M is it's contribution driven. So whatever interest comes in from the members, this will be treated, but it needs an input contribution to treat. I think the most recent thing that has been done in security was to adapt and introduce changes based on the discussions we had in the security discussion on ITOT level. As you know, we now it was now finalized on ITOT level, ITOT side to approve the security specification there, and they were interested in some changes. Some were oversights that need to be corrected on oneM2M side, and this has been done. This was one of the activities in the last month, sometime, or now it's years. And in addition, there are work items with regard to security enhancements. It was not listed here, but there are specific areas and work items that are active that will require input. And this, I think, dynamic authorization is one of the topics that that we are currently working on, and it's not yet finalized and distributed. Seng-Myung, you have.
Yeah, one more these things. Are you working on the lightweight cryptography? Lightweight cryptography. I mean, cryptography algos specific to the IoT devices.
Seng-Myung, you have.
Thank you. So my name is Sung-Young Jung from KT, and currently I'm the SDS Working Group Vice Chair. And I don't know, maybe Peter is gone. So there was the chairman and the other vice chairman. Anyways, I think the essence or the basic kind of mechanism that we work on our security solutions, which is majorly TS3, as you already might know, security solutions TS. We don't invent any of the kind of core security technologies like the new cryptography algorithm, like lightweight or heavyweight, for example. So we just kind of adopt the kind of existing mechanisms or technologies, which is the core security from the outside, because there are a ton of good standards and implementations out there already. And what we do is we adopt those security technologies like the authentication, authorization in oneM2M specification, the system. So, and the other thing that I want to say is, as already kind of Roland kind of mentioned, so again, basically there are two steps, because I'm security beginner with a dummy. This is what I understand and what I can tell. So there are authentication and authorization. Authorization, we provide so many different kind of mechanisms already out there into oneM2M, like the distributed authorization or the core authorization with access control policy, the other stuff, access token. So we support so many already. And regarding the authentication, we support many authentication mechanisms as well. And we also provide provisionings over a very specific kind of reference points like the MAF and MAF and so on. So there are so many things. And that's why these days we don't develop a super fancy features that much, because we have a really stable specifications already. And the recent discussion regarding one of the CDAT contribution this week is regarding the kind of provisioning, especially for the certificate. And personally, I do have a really interested conversation with CDAT, because I was working on my own implementation to implement the client certificate, which is really necessary for the field device deployment. And yeah, CDAT has experienced their implementation. So we had a good talk, and we found out that we need to kind of put a small kind of change to the specification regarding the error code to indicate the kind of specific error response code in the impersonation situation. So those are the things happening right now. And again, we have a lot of stops already. Thank you.
Jisoo?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions and the comments and so on. So I would like to also add up some experience that we had about security algorithms and so on. Basically, oneM2M is not the place where to develop algorithm itself, but oneM2M provide a mechanism to use algorithms. So there are a bunch of different algorithms, and then in one of our project, I mean internal project, we also use like a spec algorithm, which is also which is very, I mean, constrained algorithm that can be used for IoT devices, and it is perfectly working. So whatever, I mean, but I see another possibility is that we haven't yet applied, I mean, properly, but there are some other I mean, cryptography algorithm that can use like a human impedance or some of characteristics of device and circuit itself. So those are something that we can think of in the future. But anyway, I mean, oneM2M is a placeholder to use such kind of algorithms in oneM2M And then also another feature maybe you'd like to know is we also developing a specification of we have an algorithm, we have a workaround for GDPR and then PIPA, which is which try to make a oneM2M platform to be compliant with privacy protection regulations in different countries. GDPR is one of the those regulations, and then in Korea we also have PIPA, which is pretty much similar with GDPR. And in oneM2M we identified some requirements and then a mechanism, potential mechanism, how IoT platform can be compliant with those regulations from different countries. So if like your platform, I don't know whether India also have a similar regulations, but if, for example, you need to export your IoT platform to European countries or to South Korea, your platform should be compliant with those regulations, which means that if your platform collect data, like a data that can be identified personal, like a Bindu or Roland, something like that, then definitely IoT platform should follow the rules. For example, if it is quite strict, then the people or application or client cannot identify personal from collected data. And then if I ask the platform owner, say that I don't want to keep my data, then you have to delete every data because there is a right to be deleted. And then also there is some kind of consent management, right? Which means that it's okay to collect my data, but you have to use, platform owner have to use in the purpose of I allow to use it, right? So those are not actually, sometimes it is not classified as a security issue, but if we define security more broader, then those are all security issues. So oneM2M is also a place where develop to be compliant with those privacy and security related regulations. So if you're interested in, and then if India has similar regulations and so on, then you are happy to bring some requirement and then some solutions to oneM2M. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, in fact, if you have these documents, one is technical report TR 0008, which we have transposed, and TS 0003, which are the this is also transposed by TSDSI and made into national standards. So these two documents give you the complete depth and coverage of security issues and how they have been resolved, how authentication is done, how the secure data transfer is there across the functions, all that. Those are contained in those documents. And some new items are also being considered, like KYC, MKYC, and similar documents and all that. Bindu, you have to say something additionally.
Thank you, Mr. Madan. TSDSI has also come out with a report on MKYC, and we'll be very happy to share it with the community. In fact, we are considering in TSDSI to maybe submit this as a liaison to one of the subsequent oneM2M TP meetings. But we will share this report in advance with the relevant stakeholders. We are also, India is also right now in the process of evolving the data protection privacy bill. So that is another activity that is happening, similar to the GDPR regulations. Thank you.
And there is another report developed, which is we are sending as a liaison statement on mobile data protection and this thing, using such systems and all that. My data protection, privacy, and all that. That's also a report of TSDSI. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you, Roland. I'm Shifali from TSDSI. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. I just had a question, a clarification. You had mentioned about Anycast and Sumcast. So I just wanted to understand what is the difference between the two.
The example shown here is that you might request the data and you need only one response. You might have several devices maybe that detect some temperature. You might only need one since depending on the use case, you expect that if you have one temperature in a certain area in a room or so, that might be the correct temperature. I don't need 10 or whatever temperature sensors I feel. So the Anycast request is provide me one reply, and then so the CSE is only requesting whatever algorithm, only one response back, so that you don't need to push out to all of the sensors and get 10 similar responses, and you need so this is the distinction here. Or you can define how many you want. So it's all, but it's a designated number of responses of a set of sensors.
Thank you. The other question I had is how do you interwork with 3GPP?
This is defined in you mean technically or socially? No. It seems fun, but this was not my intention to. Both is important in order to get to reuse the information that may be available by APIs defined in 3GPP. You need to interact with 3GPP in person, to align also the understanding. And I have to admit, I think we can be proud that oneM2M triggered the definition of APIs, these northbound APIs of functionality in 3GPP, since we said it would be good to have, and then some years ago they started that. But in principle, we leverage the information that is provided by those specifications of be it T8 or NEF or depending on the release you look at. And so from oneM2M side, we have to adjust or update our specifications according to the releases defined in 3GPP. But this is the one of the core information sources technically also of these interfaces. But we have the expert of exactly this work item here. So Bob, you may enhance to what I've said.
Thank you. So just to add to what Roland was just saying, part of what he was describing is the interface that is defined by 3GPP and deployed, and that interface is exposed through the SCEF or NEF in the current versions. That API is out there to enable application servers to provide the services that 3GPP has made available. What we've done in oneM2M is taken some of the resource structures that we've defined and defined procedures for the use and deployment of cellular-based IoT devices to be able, so that we could take advantage of it from the application side. And by exposing that through oneM2M resources, your application does not need to know about the 3GPP API or establish a relationship with the mobile network operators. You're accessing that functionality through your oneM2M CSE and those APIs, and you get a lot of benefits out of that. Some of the clear ones are the scheduling of the sleep modes and timing modes and accessibility modes. We have slide packages and presentations with 20 or 30 different features that have been exposed by the 3GPP community that we have or have on our roadmap to to map into functions that an application that is managing IoT devices can take advantage of. And this is also a key part of one of the work items we have ongoing now. Enrico, do you want to jump in or? Okay. This is also a key part of a work item that we have going on now. We call it Protect the Network, because if anyone, coming out of, coming out of, the IoT domain, I would say, I'll start there. In the IoT domain, it's easy to build a sensor, and it's easy to connect to your Wi-Fi and send data into, into wherever you're storing that information. And then, the way I like to present this is, when things don't go right, when you're doing that, the thing that you always do when you're experimenting with that is you have the board reset, right? We do that with so many things in our life. That is crucially detrimental to a mobile network, because if you can imagine thousands and thousands of devices just in even a small area unable to communicate with the application server, and then that developer has put in this mechanism to reboot the device, because that's how we deal with it, right? If you're familiar with cellular technology, that's going to create a signal storm, and it's going to have a very negative effect on your network. It's been experienced, and GSMA has published guidelines for handling that. This to kind of bring that to an end. This is the core of some of how we're using the 3GPP network APIs, the SCEF APIs, and then also all of the things that we already have in oneM2M to define how we can meet those GSMA guidelines, for the efficient communications to avoid breaking the cellular networks, using a oneM2M system. The benefit there is the mobile networks operators can get a certified oneM2M component. The developers building a new device don't have to know how to operate on a cellular network safely, because it's in this device, and they can work on it just the way they do with their Wi-Fi right now. And then when the mobile network operator is ready to allow that device on scale on their system, they actually have some visibility into how that device is operating, and they could do things to make sure it operates safely and efficiently. The device developers, because they're trying to figure out how to make money in a cellular domain, they don't want to have cellular experts. They don't have to. They can just worry about just capturing that sensor value and sending it on its way, and they get to operate. In a compartmented mode, which is how we want to operate, because we can't all be experts in everything. So that was a fairly long-winded explanation of how we integrate with 3GPP, and it's kind of two-faceted. The SCEF API that is managed strictly through oneM2M, exposed with APIs, and then additional work describing how to do many of those things using other existing oneM2M capabilities.
No, I'm not going to add really much more to what Bob already has explained technically, but just I want to say that as a witness, as Telecom Italia Mobile, we have some of our services on oneM2M. In particular, we have all the NB-IoT devices which are exposed on the platform of oneM2M. Is really our commercial offer. And we have started also to offer cellular IoT. There are advantages which are partially the ones said by Bob. There are still some work to be done on the SCEF and other stuff to arrive to compete. But one of the great advantages is that our customer can use different technologies, interact with the different technologies through the same platform, and not only for management. Most of the cellular IoT platform are only for management of device or configuration. This is really data sharing, the way in which communicate. And I can say is our commercial offer from at least 2.5 years free now. So it's not, and all the NB-IoT devices are on oneM2M in Telecom Italia, and some of the cellular IoT devices are on oneM2M. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? I think this is the benefit of a face-to-face situation, that you can have all these questions discussed. We can even in the break maybe discuss further. If not, then I'd like to hand over to Andreas for the second part.
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much also for the host giving me the opportunity to speak here. Yeah, the title is, or I've been asked to speak about developer resources. Yeah, my name is Andreas Neubacher. I'm working for Deutsche Telekom, and on the slides, as you can see here, there's another Andreas. Andreas was a very popular name in my age or my time as I was born. There's another Andreas Kraft, who is also working for Deutsche Telekom. I want to give some credits to Andreas Kraft, who is now online. He is there and probably is also able to speak and answer questions if there are any afterwards. Andreas is a very passionate developer, and actually also the slides are created by him, and I'm just the avatar now presenting what he has developed and what he has thought about in the past. Let's try to. Okay, thank you. There's another button which is not PC. Yeah, the subject of the chat or of the presentation here is actually developer tool, developer support. But I think I thought about while we were discussing here and also along the whole week in the TP, there have been questions. And then I was asking myself about why we are talking about developer tools here. I think let's go back a step and look what oneM2M as an organization actually is and a standard or a specification actually is. So Roland had a presentation, a slide set, slide 6, there was the process given there, you know, oneM2M is doing specifications. So the members are doing specifications. So the members are contributing to specifications. What is a specification? A specification is a piece of text. A text describing how something is built. For example, how, for example, a car is being built. The specification is then transposed by the partners like TSDSI in India to a standard. So it's just the formal aspects of the text has been changed from a specification to a standard. So the legal status has changed. But it still takes to describe how something is being built. It's not yet a product. It's not yet a piece of software or a piece of code because nobody wants to be constrained in its implementation. So, and finally, you end up in a piece of text, a standard. That's all. That's the same for 3GPP, so which also very well perceived, and it's also the same for ITF, IEEE, and other organizations doing standards and specifications. So, but if you look to 3GPP, you will not find developer support there. You cannot even find software there, so you need to build it by yourself. So in this sense, I think you should also honor that oneM2M is not having only doing specification. There is something on top. So developer support is not something being granted from the very beginning. Okay, so I took some extra mile now to explain a bit the process, and that you should not or shall not take developer support for granted. It's there because there are very passionate people behind, and there are also already implementations out there. Okay, coming to the presentation and the slides Andreas kindly prepared for me. So if you look at the left, right, upper corner, you see following the oneM2M specification process. Here you can find some references, and you have a source where you can find the formal specifications, where you can find the text which describes how is oneM2M or how the car is being built. So actually, we are not building a car, we are building software where applications can be run on top for IoT. So you can also see there is also a GitLab link there. On the GitLab link there, you can find, for example, you can also see a bit how the specification process is being done. So for example, some aspects of the specification of the corrections are done via GitLab. So you can find issues there, and you can find where people are discussing about what need to be improved, or where, for example, corrections need to be done. So on top, so describing how something is being built in textual manner, we have also there lectures and tutorials. So if you take my analogy about, for example, describing how to build a car, here we have also lectures how to drive the car. So these lectures and tutorials actually are giving you an insight how to use this software, how to use this technology oneM2M, which is built for IoT, and how you can use or how you can build an application on top. This is actually like the driving license. So for those who don't need to be interested in the details about how the insides of oneM2M are being working, so these 17, for example, core common service functions, you don't need to know in detail how they are working, and also how, for example, Roland explained them before. So you just need to drive them, you just need to use them. And in this lecture and tutorial sections, you can find lectures, tutorials, and probably also those slides you have seen before, how this technology is working and how to use those functions being provided by oneM2M. And of course, very popular, there is also some YouTube videos, short and crisp videos, really short and crisp videos, where at the end you really learn and which get you forward how to use this oneM2M CSE functionality, for example. So I can really recommend those videos. I've watched them as well. So sometimes if you watch a YouTube video, after watching, I don't know, 45 minutes of video, you learn that the specific content you want to look, you wanted to see there is actually not there. But for these specific videos, which are really short and crisp, I can really recommend to go through, because there's everything in you need for this specific task or for this specific headline you have in there. Another way is how to get forward with software and development or development process is usually you look at something someone else has been done already. And this is where you can find in the left lower corner, for example, how to use, and where you can find projects, for example, have been dealing with oneM2M in the past. What content can you find there? So first of all, there have been hackathons, and the projects have been documented, for example, on Hex.io. You can see all the previous hackathons which have been carried out and what the teams have been done, and also the ideas and how they used oneM2M to implement their ideas and to make it a really good IoT use case. For those ones being familiar with development, typically Stack Overflow is a source of knowledge. So if I face troubles with my email account or even with some popular products from Microsoft, I type in something, and then on Hexter, on Stack Overflow, I get some good insights and answers how to solve my problem. And also the passionate contributor to oneM2M, they also maintain and look in this Stack Overflow channels and answer questions if there are any, for example. And this is also something where oneM2M members are supporting the community, which are not even being members of oneM2M, in their questions, in their problems, how to get forward with oneM2M. So I hope this one. Yeah. Okay, so now we have talked about okay, so I switched off the microphone as well. I hope I didn't switch off any important audio. So beside the fact how things are being built, so the specifications, for example, you can find them. Okay, thank you. And how to use, for example, these tools. You also need to find, for example, implementations of oneM2M of the specifications directly. So instead of, let me say, just reading the specifications, understand the specification, and want to implement something, you don't need to implement them by yourself if you don't want. So there is already open source software out there. So there are already cars aside or cars there you can already use. And this is the open source CSEs, for example. So the CSE is the piece of software we learned before. Actually, you can compare with an operating system. So you can use this piece of software and can run your IoT application on top. And you can use this application and port this application to another CSE from another vendor. This is interoperability. This is why we are doing standards and run this application again. And these underlying cars, this underlying software, the CSEs you can obtain, for example, from ACME, so which is also designed by or developed by my colleague Andreas, who is on the line now. Actually, he did this software also beside his normal working hours. This was really an extra mile for him. I think he did it between 10 o'clock in the evening and 2 o'clock in the morning, probably. He developed a CSE, and here you can see that this is really a great achievement from his side, and that this is also going to work. There are other open source software projects like the Möbius project, Ocean, or Eclipse oneM2M, for example, which is there since the very beginning. And a new software project is coming up. It's called Tiny IoT. It's an implementation which should run on very constrained devices as well, so that the CSE can run on its own constrained devices. There are also open source device frameworks mainly for constrained devices. ETIS has done in US has done some effort to develop some software based on oneM2M specifications. And in all the open source projects above there, most of them you can also find some resources for Arduino, for constrained devices, how to connect them and use them together with oneM2M. And beside this, there are some tools related to the oneM2M specification and the language. There is the SDT tool. We have seen the SDT is a model how to model devices and also complex devices with different classes and modules. And there are some tools associated as well, which are helping the developer to find the right model. And one big step ahead is also the oneM short name helper. As you can see, in specifications, usually you try, or in coding or codes or in protocols, you try to be very constrained with, you try to save bits you transmit, and therefore, for example, we have ACP, for example, is the access control policy. For example, is the short name is ACP. So, but the long name, if you convert it to the long name, so the developer has an advantage to see exactly, okay, what does this mean? He does not need to look up in a specification what this means. And also in this regard, Andreas has developed, for example, a tool which is accessible via this link. Beside this one, there's also testing support and IP development support, and we are also working on specification and document tool sets in the future that the specification development process will be enhanced as well. Okay, with this, I hope I have not taken too much time and bored you with something you anyhow already know. With this one, I want to conclude my presentation, and if there are any questions, the floor is now open.
So we are working on the Eclipse edition of oneM2M, and I see that the last updates are almost 3 years ago. And when I want to migrate to try other versions, like I don't see any links for Mobius. And what I feel is Mobius, a lot of documentation is in Korean, so it's sometimes difficult to follow for us. So I think one development is in Java, the other development is JavaScript, the other is in Python. When I see 2-3 versions. So it is like migrating from one version to other is also like, it would be a complete change. So any suggestions in that aspect?
Yeah, so I think first of all, before I hand over to Sam Young, who is very much involved in the Ocean open source project, I think that's the reason why I explained before the process, you know, and who to ask for help, or who to, let me say, who to see the responsibilities. As I said before, oneM2M is as an organization, and we as members, we are contributing to the standards. So these open source projects can be done by anyone, you know, anyone, because this is the beauty of oneM2M and open specifications, that anyone can come and can read in the specification, can implement something. So if a company in India wants to, let me say, open up an own open source project, they're free to do this. So you just need to read the specification, implement it in, I don't know, C++ or whatever language they want. This doesn't mean that they need to interact with the other open source project. So that's how it's built. You know, that's on the other hand side might be a pain, but on the other hand side, it's the beauty of this open standard, because sometimes products are being perceived as standard. So I have heard this quite often also in this context here. There is this product from, or there's something, this is the standard. It's not a standard, it's a quasi standard. It's a big company providing you some resources, tools, but you have no influence, for example, on the whole process, what's being implemented. You know, we have seen this 17 CSFs, and they have been implemented because there was a need from some companies, some members for, and this was the reason why it's implemented. On the way, how to migrate from Java to C++, Mobius, or Python, I would like to hand over to more elaborate.
Yeah, before you answer, I have one more question to add on. So basically, I wanted to understand also, let us say, like we have been using oneM2M extensively, different aspects we have been trying, and we are trying to see things board other similar platforms. So like, if we want to contribute as an academic institute, we are from IIIT Hyderabad, and if we see like we want to really start a version or contribute to it, like where do we approach? How do we start? That is also one more question. Yeah.
Okay. I think since we are here in India, since we have here, let me say, a face-to-face meeting, I think there is Bindo, TSDSI. Actually, going back to the presentation of Roland, actually, he presented that this partnership project. So oneM2M is actually the partnership project between TSDSI, ATIS, ETSI, and so on, and those organizations. So since we are in India, and if you're an Indian institute or company, so you need to approach TSDSI, and via TSDSI, you can become member of oneM2M and can contribute to. That's the way you need to do it. Okay.
So I'd just like to add, IIIT Hyderabad is a member of, is an individual member of oneM2M through TSDSI, and we'll be very happy, Anuradha-ji, to assist you with on how to get onboarded and start attending the meetings and contributing.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, if you're already a member, then it's quite easy, because you just look at the oneM2M website, you log in, you see the calendar, you see the meetings, and you show up at the meetings and raise your hand. Say, okay, I'm here.
Good morning. My name is Mambasawala. I'm from Keysight Technologies. I have a technical question related to oneM2M. What I'm given to understand so far is this is a universal wrapper which allows you the heterogeneous, IoT device to communicate to the network in a unified way, right? Now, when we look into the applications that are that are envisaged in 5G private networks, particularly for manufacturing, warehousing, which has plenty of IoT devices, one of the critical requirements is latency. And with this wrapper around the IoT devices, what is our vision in terms of specifications for latency consistent to the requirements of 3GPP or 5G? And what is the scalability that we see for 6G, where we are talking about tens of thousands of IoT devices in a very small cluster, where the criticality can be as much as 0.1 millisecond of latency?
Okay, catch you at 1 millisecond. So the question is, thank you for the question. The question with latency is a difficult one. For 3GPP, they are doing connectivity. So the latency is defined somehow by the frame structure, by the slot length, and so on. So this is something 3GPP can nicely do. If you refer to the application, then in the industry, private networks, or whatever vertical, this is quite easy. Everyone talks about the 1 millisecond. But 3GPP just defined the 1 millisecond between the device and the base station. That's all. Everything else is out of scope. The same is here for us, So we cannot define any latency we can reach because it's an implementation matter. It depends, as we have here before, you can have a Java implementation, you have a JavaScript implementation, you can have a Python. They all differ in performance. So this is the thing, it's an implementation matter. So the standard itself, so from oneM2M point of view, I think we cannot give you a hard limit saying this is something we can reach or oneM2M is able to reach. You can reach everything. It's a matter of hardware implementation and software being used. So if you want to offer, for example, products in this area, you need to take care on your product being performant enough to reach those targets the customer has to you. So even if 3GPP guarantees 1 millisecond, for example, I'm quite sure on your data sheet of your product, you will not write 1 millisecond because if you have done your homework properly, you know that the 1 millisecond is just between the base station and the UE. So if your product is badly implemented, for example, it could be 1 hour, and 3GPP is nice. So it depends on your implementation.
This is Andreas. I also like to answer this question and two questions before. First of all, I'm very sorry that I could not be in person at the conference. I think it would be very great to be there. So I hope you can understand me. So to answer this question first, I think one of the possibilities is one of the very nice features that oneM2M has built into the architecture, and that is basically support for edge devices. So IoT is not about sending all the devices, all the data to a big cloud and do all the processing there. I think this is not the right way to do it. I think that edge computing is a very nice way to do local computing, making local decisions, and also to reduce the delays that you have in communicating over a long distance here, and to make fast decisions, maybe on the factory floor or something like that. One can argue whether this is IoT, different thing, of course, but I guess that is one thing. Just to answer the previous questions, because I think there were two unanswered questions before regarding oneM2M, the project about I think there's some activities going on right now. So there will be a new maintainer for the oneM2M project, and it's not going that fast anymore. That's for sure. But there will be some contributions there in the future. Secondly, the questions is how to move between the different implementations, between C++, Python, Node.js implementation. The question is, why should you? Do you really want to make adaptations to that? Maybe adding new features? That is, of course, is one thing. But as a CSE, you're using the CSE in a unified way. oneM2M defines a protocol that is the same between all those implementations. So you can basically exchange them just to your need. Thank you very much.
Yeah, finally, can I give my comments on that? So before I forget, so I will start with a question regarding the 5G, 6G, the latency thing. So I think already it has been kind of answered by two Andreases already. And what I want to kind of add in the end is like oneM2M as a kind of application layer protocol, which is not the lower layer protocol like the 3GPP defines. So we define just the above kind of requirements. And if you look into the requirements TS, what we define is functional requirements. We don't define non-functional requirements like the performance or latency and so on. So that's our scope. So that's inevitable, I think. So that should be my kind of +1 answer. And regarding the question on Mobius, like the Java and Node.js, the first question, that was the first question. And anyways, I joined Katie in 2016, and the first release of the Mobius, very first release was in 2015. Anyways, as I know, the Java version was a really kind of prototype kind of implementation, which is still obsolete already. It's been a while, so we can just kind of forget about the Java version for Mobius. And now we continuously maintain the Node.js version. So we have the other tools in Node.js and so on. And maybe the other kind of answer pertaining to the Andreas Kraft's comment right before is, so he was mentioning that why do you kind of move between this implementation and the other implementation? And I think there is one case for the company who they want to their own have their own kind of implementations or oneM2M platform based on one of the open sources, because they really want to have a kind of enterprise level kind of solution for their product or services, and they cannot just use as is open sources, because for the open sources they like a couple of kind of aspects, and that is mostly kind of experimental level or the proof of concept level, which works perfectly fine, and they are really oneM2M specification compatible, I think, including Mobius. But there are the other kind of requirements for the enterprise level product, and those companies who are considering that thing, they are investigating this one and this one, the other one. Okay, Node.js, okay, we can do so because we have plenty of Node.js experienced developers and so on. So I think that is still a valid question. And just lastly, and if you are not the platform developer for your own kind of product, but you are just the application developer like the kind of service side or the device side, then of course you don't have to investigate or you don't have to know all the source code implementation. You don't have to understand what it is. Once the product or the open source is certified by oneM2M, for example, then you can just rely on that, as you already know. And in that case, I really, as Andreas Neubacher already mentioned in his presentation, I really encourage the other people who are new people to oneM2M as the application side developer to kind of watch or maybe contribute the oneM2M developer tutorials. We have several tutorials. I have the English version from 2017, but it's been a while, and I keep updating my kind of teaching material or tutorial program every year in TTA, but my kind of presentation is in Korean. Even the slides are still, everything is in English. So I could spare some time to have the English dub version and post it on YouTube as we do every year. So That's what we are doing, and maybe the Indian community like the CDAT or TSDDC could do the similar thing, because I believe we don't have to kind of maintain one stream or packages of the tutorials by one organization, but it should be more than one, just like a YouTube thing. So if there is a really good technology, then everyone is posting their tutorials because it is really doable and people really need different aspects, different contents for the tutorial. And I think we should do the same thing for oneM2M. Thank you.
I'll just add one thing. Right? Like them, we have also put some tutorials on our website as well. That is coi.c.in. You are already aware of that. So go visit that site. You will find tutorials as well as some videos. Right? There are enough documentation there. You can go ahead with that. And as a matter of fact, we already offered to the entire industry ecosystem to come join us. Our platform is there for free to use and develop applications by anybody from the Indian industry. So we're open to that. Just a response to Masala's question, oneM2M, if you are using natively, it's not a wrapper. You don't need a wrapper. You can use natively, use oneM2M as a platform, and the latency which is there in any other competing platform, in oneM2M's case, it is nothing additional. It might be better, right? But it's not worse for sure. Right?
Thank you. I also would like to provide some further comments. First, about latency. Basically, oneM2M architecture is designed based on RESTful architecture, which means that it's difficult to support hard real-time requirements, right? So you are using like a web servers and so on to monitor and then to do something for managing train or drone things, right? Automatic vehicles and so on, because those are really the domain that require hard real time. But typically hard real time is not appropriate for the system designed with RESTful architecture, right? But there are some other ways oneM2M system can be used to those domains. But anyway, latency is, if you are talking about hard real-time latency, then it's quite difficult. You need to find out some other solution, right? But there are some activities in oneM2M together with MEC, because MEC, edge computing and so on, is there to provide a more fast response and so on, even like a oneM2M systems and so on. So what we are currently discussing with MEC guy is how we can put oneM2M instance, not cloud whole system, but what we can do is we can make an instance of oneM2M. For example, if you have your resources and your data, and then you want to get more fast response and those services, then you can ask oneM2M system, I want to get like a more fast services and so on. Then your data and your resources and your services can be instantiated and then can be placed in one of like an edge node in this room. If we have like a edge node in this room, like here, then you can ask oneM2M system to put your resources and your data in here. Then your request doesn't need to go to the cloud, right? So that's what we are currently discussing and discussing with MEC, because they provide such kind of platform. But even within just oneM2M, we can support such kind of services, because in release 4 we have a software campaign that can manage the hardware node to host oneM2M platform. And also we have a mechanism that offload oneM2M resources to a specific edge node and so on. So combination with those two features, even without edge computing like MEC, you can have edge computing of oneM2M stuff, right? So that's what we are currently doing. And then if you're interested in like having collaboration with MEC and oneM2M together, then you are more than welcome, because at the moment we are in a stage that how MEC and then oneM2M can work together. So as soon as we identify and write a white paper and then identify what we can do together, then maybe there is a possibility to have to identify or design or even the open source folks in both community can sit together and work together to make it happen. And then and as Roland mentioned, it's really up to you guys. If you have a willingness to work on that area, then yeah, it's open to everyone. So you just came here and then you bring your platform, and then this is my oneM2M, and then this is their MEC platform. Then sit together and work together. Yeah. So that's how we are working in oneM2M. And then also for open source, as Andreas mentioned, there are a couple of open source projects, and then what is the beauty of oneM2M open source community is there are multiple open source out there, and depending on your need, you can choose whatever you want. There is a Python version, there is Java version, and then C version and C++ version. Although some of the project has already been out there and then used by many companies and so on, but some of them recently implemented, and then some of them developed partially, but it is put on hold. But this is all open source. So for example, in our cases, we develop Tiny IoT using C implementation, right? But when we develop our C implementation, we look for existing, open source implementation, because Artis has developed, I forgot, IoT OS or something, and it is implemented in C++. And then when we develop our Tiny IoT, that implementation was really helpful to define and to look at the structure and class and so on. And then also oneM2M was one of the initial early stage open source project of oneM2M. But now it's a little slow, but there were some reconstructing and then discussion how we can add more features to oneM2M and so on. So if you are interested in to be involved in those open source projects and so on, then it's more than welcome. And then there are always a room to discuss, to support you, to help you, and so on. For example, last time we we want to add some features to oneM2M, like a flex container instance. But it was quite difficult how to do that, because it is now in Eclipse Foundations, and we were not the committer and so on. So we had a discussion with Orange and then Lacianas and so on. And then finally, we developed our code to be added to oneM2M. And then based on our exercise and the contributions and so on, they allow us to be a committer of the oneM2M project and so on. So if there are some peoples in India and so on want to contribute to oneM2M or Ocean and so on, then just raise your hand and then approach them and then discuss them. They are there to help all the communities and developers. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Sachin from IIIT. So just want to maybe answer Andreas Kraft and I think Soumyong. They were asking regarding why do you want to move from one version to another? The idea is that if you see the oneM2M implementation, it is currently on version 2. And yeah, so basically, and we are now talking about version 5. So one reason is that, and so we want to also, by the way, we are working with Theory and basically on the talks are going on to develop this further. But first, it is a bit slow. And the second thing is we have this Smart City Living Lab at IIIT Hyderabad, where we have like different technologies we have kind of implemented and deployed in the campus. So we definitely also want few more versions of, let's say, oneM2M to be deployed in the campus. So, and we are in like a very what is it, specific situation. We are not industry, we are not let's say, and we are academics, and we don't have too many resources that we can actually start developing let's say oneM2M version ourselves. So it's like a slightly collaborative thing. So that is the reason.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can add, I'm here. So like one thing, as you said, like we are academia and we are trying to develop a project, and we have seen multiple, whatever oneM2M we are using, we try to extract possible uses. And when we call it Living Lab, I'll be presenting soon, like I call it as a test bed to validate many platforms. So definitely we would like to work with one of the platforms, one more platform. And one more thing, answering your question, Keysight, like I have been from industry, I understand what your question is aiming at. So like we are also working with DOT on 5G use cases. Then the immediate thing what we could understand is number of nodes increasing, the latency of 5G is very small, dense deployment, all these things. So in my presentation, we are working on hyper scalability. How do we address the future need? Means oneM2M has a specific purpose like interoperability, subscription, notification. We can use those features, but to that we can add on some more blocks to make it hyper scalable and meet the future requirements. Because like now the next future is digital twins, 5G, dense deployment. So maybe like in my presentation, I'll be covering it. That is like one of the solutions we are looking at, and our institute is presently working on that. So.
Yeah. If I may answer on this, and I think we also need to conclude this session because we exaggerated our speaking time a bit. I think we always need to take care. This was the reason why I explained that the process of who is responsible for what and who is doing what, at the very beginning. So there is a say, for example, you climb up mountain in small steps. So we shouldn't mix up the things together. So oneM2M is doing the specifications, as said, and their open source project, very passionate people outside there. They are doing this they are not additionally paid for it as well. For example, like Andreas, this ACME implementation was done in his spare time. oneM2M was done by Mari. This was a part of his master thesis, for example. These have been very passionate people. They didn't get any money for it as well. And of course, in a certain time, so Mari, I think, is running also his own business now, and this is the reason why the oneM2M development is not going forward. So we cannot blame those people who are doing this for no money for others. So this was the reason why I invited also others to do this, and also Jason. So I think this is what we need to honor. If you want to develop something, there is also the possibility also, for example, of course, it might involve costs later on, but we have heard, for example, there are open access also to other platforms available also in India, for example, for trial and test reasons. So this is something you probably could use or could go along as academia, for example. With regards to this real-time issue, I always need to laugh because since 5G, 1 millisecond has become the constant in universe for real time, which is not true. I think I tried to find out the real time who has said this. I think it was a German professor of a university somewhere in this industry for the zero discussion who claimed 1 millisecond is real time. It's not. It depends on the use case. So even 5G is not real time for many industrial use cases, in fact. And I think you always need to look at the functionality you need. And from this point of view, if you look at oneM2M, it provides a lot of functionality you can use. You can deploy oneM2M, the CSE, also on the edge, which gives you an advantage over other technologies, in fact. So this was even possible before even edge computing has been come up. 3GPP provides you the possibility to drop out the data on the edge. This is their edge computing support. That's all 3GPP provides you. So from a functional point of view, oneM2M provides you everything you need to also achieve those low latency requirements. But of course, it would not be credible, as also Jason said, for example, to give a non-functional requirement we cannot hold as an organization with our scope, because it depends on implementation. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation and would hand over to.
Can I just jump in there? Because I'm going to take a different angle on some of the responses so far. One of the questions regarding the oneM2M being stuck on release 2, what can you do about it? And to me, this is the main reason to use a standardized solution. You're not stuck with oneM2M. And if you pick one of these other open sources that we've been talking about, the impact should be extremely minimum to almost none, unless there's a bug in the implementation that one of those implementations. oneM2M, we actually happen to know from back before there are some slight differences there. So, but generally speaking, you could take one of these other implementations, deploy that to replace the CSE you have, and all the applications that you've built and deployed around the campus, they should work, right? I think the biggest obstacle you'll have is in the different database that implementation use versus whatever new implementation you use, right? Because that's an implementation difference. But after you deal with that, all the deployed assets, all those applications, they should pretty much work. And I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot that has changed from the version that you're using to the current version. So you can pick up one of the newer versions and not have too much difficulty. Regarding the hyperscalability to be able to horizontally scale, I spent a lot of time working on that in a previous company. It was a commercial implementation, so not available. But that's a lot of implementation detail there. With a single CSE running in, I think we were using Azure. We were in the 20 milliseconds per primitive, all running local. There was no external network there. But we were able to do, with the threading implementations and then changing the way we access our databases. We didn't improve that time for a single primitive, but we were able to get around 1,000 or a little bit over 1,000 transactions per second. So we're not getting, again, our latency of a message wasn't that, but we were getting 1,000. So, okay, that wasn't so bad. But then it took another level of effort to scale beyond that. And that's we did horizontal scaling. These are all implementation details. These are not in the specification of oneM2M. These are things that you could have students work on and look at. You could, because again, none of the things that I talked about from a scalability perspective impact the applications. These are all just further development of a CSE. So, an approach you could take is picking a different open source implementation, one that matches the skill sets of the student programming capabilities, and then look at how you could build that. That could be student projects. I think there's a module later on to talk about university type stuff, but that could be a student project. How can we scale that? And then, it's more of an advanced student. I wouldn't do that at the undergraduate level, but those things can be done. Right? Okay. Sure. All right, Andreas, I'm done.
Okay, so finally, I hand over the microphone and the floor to Akash. Thank you.
Just a minute, I'll request him to felicite you. So I would request Mr. Vijay Madan, Advisors for Services and Solutions at TSDSI, to conclude this interactive session with felicitating our speakers. Mr. Rowland. So, right, so we'll proceed with the coffee break for half an hour. We'll resume with the next session on IoT M2M standardization initiatives in India at 11:15. Lunch.
So Arun, what has happened is we've had some very lively discussions and we are running late. The certain discussions that could have happened over coffee break have happened in the room for the benefit of the people who are there joined with us online. So we can have a shortened coffee break for about 20 minutes, come back into the room, continue with the remaining sessions, and we will try to also shorten the lunch break so that we can cover up time. Thank you.
So then we'll start at 12. Mr. Vijay Madan, I would request you to kindly felicitate Mr. Andreas with a memento or token of appreciation. Thank you. So I would request all you to proceed to the breakout area and have coffee and some snacks. And then we'll resume at 12. Yes, we'll resume at 12. No.